You voted for it, and now it has arrived. Change begins now.
Britain's Labour Party won by a landslide in the country's parliamentary elections early on Friday, booting out the Conservative-led government after 14 years in power. Incoming Prime Minister Keir Starmer spoke of new beginnings in his victory speech.
We said we would end the chaos, and we will. We said we would turn the page, and we have. Today we start the next chapter, begin the work of change, the mission of national renewal, and start to rebuild our country.
Labour voters cheered as the party was projected to capture nearly two-thirds of the 650 seats in Parliament. But Starmer comes to power facing a sluggish economy, creaking public services and falling living standards. All of that played a part in the Conservatives' demise, with voters punishing them for a cost of living crisis, as well as years of instability and infighting that saw 5 different prime ministers in office since the Brexit vote of 2016. The Conservatives were forecast to win just about 130 seats, the worst election performance in the party's history. Outgoing Prime Minister Rishi Sunak conceded Conservative defeat Friday morning, though he managed to keep his own seat in Parliament.
Today, power will change hands in a peaceful and orderly manner, with goodwill on all sides. That is something that should give us all confidence in our country's stability and future.
The Conservatives also took a hit from the rise of the right-wing populist Reform UK party. Reform leader and Brexit campaigner Nigel Farage finally won a seat in Parliament after 7 failed attempts over the years. His party captured 4 seats in total, and in parts of the country they won more votes than the Conservatives. The surge in support for a populist alternative echoed similar results in Europe recently. But, unlike France, where the far-right National Rally Party made historic gains in last Sunday's first-round elections, overall, the British public has thrown their weight behind a centre-left party to bring about change.
The Labour Party has won this general election, and I have called Sir Keir Starmer to congratulate him on his victory. Today, power will change hands in a peaceful and orderly manner, with goodwill on all sides. That is something that should give us all confidence in our country's stability and future. The British people have delivered a sobering verdict tonight. There is much to learn and reflect on, and I take responsibility for the loss. To the many good, hard-working Conservative candidates who lost tonight, despite their tireless efforts, their local records of delivery, and their dedication to their communities, I am sorry. I will now head down to London, where I will say more about tonight's result before I leave the job of Prime Minister, to which I have given my all. I will then return here, to my family's home, and I look forward to spending more time with you all in the weeks, months, and years ahead. Thank you.
U.S. President Joe Biden used 4th of July celebrations on Thursday to hit back at doubts about his stamina and mental acuity. As Biden mingled with guests, he repeated his pledge to remain in the presidential race after a supporter called out for him to keep up the fight.
You got me, man. I'm not going anywhere. All right.
Since the 81-year-old Democrat's shaky debate performance against Republican rival Donald Trump last week, his appearances are being even more closely scrutinized, and some in his party have urged him to step aside. If re-elected, Biden would be 86 at the end of a second term, and many Democratic voters are worried about whether he can keep up a grueling pace of work for another term. Abigail Disney, granddaughter of Walt Disney, on Thursday became the latest major Democratic donor to call for Biden to withdraw from the race, telling CNBC that she will halt donations to the party until he does so. U.S. Independence Day festivities hosted by Biden at the White House included a barbecue for a few thousand active-duty military service members and their families.
Happy Independence Day!
Reading from a teleprompter, Biden made no major errors in delivering brief remarks, but at one point appeared to go off script to make reference to a war cemetery that Trump declined to visit while in office.
And by the way, you know, I was in that World War I cemetery in France, and the one that one of our colleagues, the former president, didn't want to go and be up there. I probably shouldn't even say it. Anyway.
Freedom, as we
Biden was joined at the celebrations by Vice President Kamala Harris. Sources have said that Harris is the leading contender to take Biden's place in the November election if Biden were to drop out, though his allies remain confident he can shore up support from voters and donors. Among the events on Biden's calendar being closely scrutinized is an interview with ABC News set to be broadcast in a Friday primetime slot. He also travels to Wisconsin the same day for a campaign rally.
Smoke billows from the roof of a mall in the northern Israeli city of Acre after a rocket barrage launched from Lebanon was intercepted overhead. A video obtained by Reuters showed. Reuters was able to corroborate the video. Lebanon's Hezbollah launched a major rocket and drone attack on Israel on Thursday and threatened to hit new targets in retaliation for the killing of a top commander a day earlier in the south of the country. The latest surge of violence in the steadily worsening border conflict. Sparked by Gaza, the conflict between Iran-backed Hezbollah and Israel has raised fears of a full-scale war, which both sides have indicated they want to avoid, and diplomatic efforts, led by the United States, are working to prevent. Mohammed Nasser was one of the most senior Hezbollah commanders Israel has killed during the conflict. Senior Hezbollah official Hisham Safieddin, speaking at a memorial for him, said the group would widen its targets after his killing.
The series of responses continues in succession, and this series will continue to target new sites that the enemy did not imagine would be hit.
Sonic booms rattled nerves for the second day in Beirut and other parts of Lebanon as Israeli jets broke the sound barrier, Lebanese state media reported. Hezbollah said it launched more than 200 rockets and a swarm of drones at 10 Israeli military sites on Thursday. The Israeli military distributed videos it said showed interceptions, as well as strikes on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. The hostilities have inflicted a heavy toll on both sides of the frontier, forcing tens of thousands of Lebanese and Israelis to flee their homes.
ChatGPT maker OpenAI has been the victim of a cyber attack. That's according to reports by the New York Times on Thursday. It says a hacker gained access last year to internal messaging systems. Details of the company's artificial intelligence products were reportedly stolen. However, it's thought the hacker didn't actually get into the systems where OpenAI houses and builds its AI. There was no comment on the report from the Microsoft-backed firm. Executives reportedly informed staff and the board in April last year. They didn't share the news publicly as no customer data was stolen. The report says the incident wasn't considered to be a national security threat, with the hacker not thought to have ties to a foreign government. OpenAI said in May that it had disrupted 5 covert influence operations that sought to use its AI for deceptive activity across the internet.
The EU confirmed it will impose sweeping tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles from Friday. Thursday's announcement is likely to raise tensions with Beijing, but there's a 4-month window during which the tariffs are provisional. Intensive talks are expected to continue between the two sides as China threatens wide-ranging retaliation. The aim is to prevent what Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called a flood of cheap EVs built with state subsidies hitting the market. Eric Mamer is spokesperson for the EU Commission.
What the EU wishes for is a solution. It is not the introduction of tariffs. The introduction of tariffs is not an objective per se. It is a means to correct an imbalance, an unfair competitive situation to the detriment of producers of electric vehicles in the EU compared to those who are producing vehicles in China.
Beijing said it would take all necessary measures to safeguard China's interests. These include retaliatory tariffs on exports to China of products such as cognac or pork. The EU anti-subsidy investigation has nearly 4 more months to run. It said talks with China are ongoing and hope to find a mutually beneficial solution that could prevent tariffs. The EU confirmed Chinese automaker BYD will face duties of 17.4%, while SAIC is hit with 37.6%. Companies deemed by the EU to have cooperated with the anti-subsidy investigation, including Western car makers Tesla and BMW, will be subject to 20.8% tariffs. The issue has caused divides in Europe and faced strong opposition in Germany. The country's car makers made a third of their sales last year in China, and Volkswagen criticised Thursday's move. Auto industry executives have also warned against the tariffs. They're fearful of counter-tariffs or other measures that could affect the competitiveness of their cars in China. The issue will be put to EU members in an advisory vote in the coming weeks.
China has dropped some hints about how it could retaliate against EU tariffs on its electric vehicle exports. The Commerce Ministry said Friday it would hold a hearing to examine claims European brandy producers are selling into the country at below market rates. Officials have also referred to another probe into EU pork exports. Analysts say the targets were chosen to pressure Spain and France, which have been among the strongest backers of the new levies. Europe this week imposed import tariffs of up to 37.6% on China-made EVs. That will hit local brands like BYD, but also Chinese-made cars from Western firms including Tesla. The tariffs are provisional, while Brussels conducts a probe into Beijing's support for its car makers. China has said both sides should stay at the negotiating table for now. Officials have said they don't want another trade war, but will take all necessary steps to protect Chinese firms. Reports in state-backed media indicate other possible targets for retaliation. That could include dairy products and luxury cars. The EU tariffs have also divided opinion in Europe. German automakers have called for them to be scrapped, fearing they could be a target for Beijing's response.
Markets reacted positively Friday to a comprehensive election win for Keir Starmer's Labour Party.
Change begins now.
The pound, British stocks and government bonds all rose on Friday morning. The blue-chip FTSE 100 index gained around 0.4% in early trades, while sterling edged higher against the dollar and held steady against the euro. Starmer's centre-left Labour won a massive majority in the 650-seat Parliament.
Our task is nothing less than renewing the ideas that hold this country together.
It meant Rishi Sunak's Conservatives suffered the worst performance in the party's long history. Voters punished them for a cost of living crisis, failing public services and a series of scandals. One leading analyst said a landslide victory provides the sort of clarity and stability equity markets need in a volatile world. Sterling has edged up since Sunak called the election in late May. It's the strongest performing major currency against the dollar this year, with a gain of 0.3%. On a trade-weighted basis, the pound is now back where it was at the time of the Brexit vote 8 years ago. It reflects a belief among traders and investors that a period of intense market volatility in the UK may be drawing to a close. UK stocks have hit record highs this year, helped by a slow-growing but comparatively stable economy and decelerating inflation. But the memory of the market chaos triggered by former Prime Minister Liz Truss's mini-budget of September 2022 is still fresh in investor minds. Britain has suffered from the highest inflation and some of the highest interest rates in the developed world over the last couple of years. Looking ahead, the Bank of England is widely expected to lower interest rates at some point in the next few months.
Analysts had already forecast a blockbuster quarter for Samsung, but the company says it's going to do even better. On Friday, the tech giant said it expects second quarter profits to jump more than 15-fold. That would take profits at the world's largest maker of memory chips, smartphones and TVs to just over $7.5 billion. It's the company's best result since the third quarter of 2022. The numbers were driven by explosive demand for AI chips. That also helped prices for semiconductors to jump. Industry experts estimate memory chip prices were up as much as a fifth over the period. Investors now await news on whether Samsung's latest semiconductors will be approved for supply to AI champion Nvidia. Sources say they had earlier failed tests over heat and power consumption problems. There are doubts too over the market for lower-end chips amid lackluster demand for consumer gadgets. One analyst said sales of such silicon would determine if the chip recovery can continue into next year. Samsung shares rose around 2% in early trade Friday following the numbers. The company will release detailed second quarter earnings at the end of the month.
Since her brother re-entered her life, Britney Spears has entered a new hopeful chapter. Despite not being in touch with much of her family, Brian Spears is reportedly one of her strongest supporters currently, significantly impacting her life for the better. He has intervened to aid in the gradual reuniting with her estranged sons, a long-standing desire of hers. Sources suggest that thanks to Brian, this long-awaited possibility is finally within reach. Britney Spears has been rumored to be going through a rough time mentally, but things are looking up. Her brother, Brian Spears, has helped her feel more hopeful. They recently reconciled, which has positively impacted her relationship with her sons. A source told Life and Style that Brian's influence has been beneficial, even though her recovery is a day-by-day process. Britney's sons are happy to be talking to her again, marking significant progress. Despite some family tensions and concerns about her public image, Britney is excited and hopeful for the future, thanks to Brian's support. His support has proven valuable as he navigates this delicate process of rekindling Britney's relationship with her sons. His influence has been pivotal, allowing Britney to slowly mend bridges and consider a future where her family can be whole again. Despite her eagerness to dive headfirst into reconciliation, Britney understands the need to tread carefully, especially with her teenage sons aged 18 and 17. According to insiders, she acknowledges that impulsive gestures, like moving to Hawaii to be closer to them overnight, might overwhelm them rather than reassure them. This realization underscores her commitment to Brian's advice, which emphasizes a measured approach to rebuilding trust and fostering a stable relationship with her children. Navigating these emotions and decisions hasn't been easy for Britney, but she remains hopeful in her belief that patience and persistence will lead to a positive outcome. Brian's steady presence continues to provide guidance and support as she navigates this sensitive journey. Despite the challenges, Britney remains hopeful that her efforts will pave the way for a future where she and her children can enjoy a healthy, loving relationship once more.
global